Historic election shift, center-right Demokraatit Party overthrows anti-American left promises business-focused reforms. Date, March 13, 2025. Summary. In a dramatic shift in the American political landscape following the 2024 elections, the center-right Demokraatit Party has emerged as a formidable force displacing the anti-American left and pledging a return to business-oriented reforms. This political upheaval encapsulates a larger narrative of discontent among working-class voters who have increasingly felt alienated by the Democratic Party's policies, which they perceive as catering more to elite interests than to their own. Key themes of the shift. 1. Disconnection from working-class voters. Sherrod Brown, a prominent figure in the Democratic Party, has voiced concerns over the widening gap between the party and its traditional working-class base. He highlights that many former Democratic voters feel neglected, particularly after high-profile events such as the Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Despite efforts from Democratic leaders to address these local issues, voters expressed a sense of abandonment, prompting them to seek alternatives, namely the Demokraatit Party. 2. Economic challenges and inflation. The economic landscape has been fraught with challenges, particularly rising inflation and the increasing cost of living. Many voters, especially those from working-class backgrounds, attribute these struggles to systemic failures originating from policies enacted since the 1990s, such as NAFTA. Brown argues that inflation is not merely an isolated issue but a symptom of deeper economic injustices that have persisted over decades. 3. Reclaiming the party's identity. Brown emphasizes the need for the Democratic Party to re-establish its identity as the Workers' Party. He argues for a shift in focus toward economic justice and policies that prioritize the needs of working-class Americans. The call for wage increases and equitable economic opportunities is central to this rebranding effort. 4. Advocating for effective government. In a parallel discourse, political analysts Ezra, Klein and Thompson advocate for a government that can efficiently deliver on its promises. They argue that excessive regulations have stifled progress and that a streamlined government approach could better serve citizens. Their vision, termed the Abundance Agenda, seeks to enhance government effectiveness in addressing the needs of the population. 5. Cultural and emotional disconnect. Beyond economic factors, there exists a significant cultural divide between the Democratic Party and working-class voters. Brown and the Analysts stress the importance of emotional engagement, urging Democrats to better understand the everyday struggles of ordinary workers and to communicate a narrative that resonates with their experiences. Timeline of events. Pre-election period 2024. As the election approached, the Democratic Party faced challenges in connecting with working-class voters. A notable shift in allegiance towards the Republican Party was observed, particularly in crucial swing states. Post-election reflections. Following the election, leaders such as Sherrod Brown began to reflect on the party's failures and the need for a re-evaluation of its identity and priorities. The loss of significant electoral ground prompted discussions on reconnecting with the base. Policy debates. The aftermath of the election catalyzed discussions around effective governance and the necessity for reforms that focus on delivering tangible outcomes for citizens, rather than being bogged down by bureaucratic inefficiencies. Divergence in perspectives. While both Sherrod Brown and Klein and Thompson highlight the discontent among working-class voters, their approaches differ. Brown focuses on the identity crisis within the Democratic Party, advocating for grassroots engagement and a return to core values that prioritize worker dignity. In contrast, Klein and Thompson push for systemic reforms that enhance governmental efficiency and effectiveness, framing their argument around the need for an abundance agenda. Conclusion. The rise of the center-right Demokraatit Party signifies a pivotal moment in American politics, driven by economic realities and cultural narratives that have reshaped party identities and voter allegiances. As the Democratic Party grapples with its image and seeks to regain the trust of its base, It faces the daunting challenge of addressing systemic failures while crafting a compelling narrative that resonates with the working class. The next few years will be critical in determining whether the Demokraatit Party can maintain its momentum or if the Democrats can successfully reclaim their role as champions of the working class. The text highlights a significant political shift in the United States following the 2024 election, in which the center-right Demokraatit Party has emerged as a powerful force challenging the anti-American left. This shift is characterized by a focus on business-oriented reforms and a recasting of the Democratic Party's identity in response to the loss of working-class support. Counterintuitive information. 1. Working-class support versus party identity. It may seem logical that a party advocating for working-class interests would maintain their support. But the Democratic Party has seen a dramatic decline in this demographic. The notion that the party has strayed from its core identity as a champion for the working class is counterintuitive, as one would expect that policies aimed at labor rights and economic justice would resonate more strongly with this group. 2. Cultural disconnection. The disconnection between the Democratic Party and working-class voters extends beyond economic policies. It suggests that voters prioritize emotional and cultural connections over tangible economic benefits. This challenges the assumption that voters will always align with the party that offers the best economic policies. Instead, many voters are drawn to parties that resonate with their values and identity, even if those parties do not necessarily align with their economic interests. 3. Ineffective government as a catalyst for change. Klein and Thompson argue that the ineffectiveness of government, rather than the size of government, is what has alienated voters. This perspective is counterintuitive to traditional political discourse, where the size of government is often seen as the primary issue. The idea that voters are more concerned with the government's ability to deliver than its sheer size challenges common assumptions about voter priorities. For historical context of discontent, the text indicates that the current discontent among working-class voters is not a new phenomenon but has historical roots extending back to the 1990s with policies like NAFTA. This suggests that many contemporary political dynamics are influenced by long-standing grievances rather than recent events. This historical perspective complicates the narrative that the political landscape is solely shaped by recent crises or elections. 5. Perception of economic success. Despite being labeled as the most pro-labor president, Biden's administration faced criticism and unpopularity from working-class voters. This counters the expectation that pro-labor policies would translate into electoral success, highlighting a disconnect between policy intentions and public perception. 6. Overeducated political class. The observation that the majority of Congress members hold college degrees and how this has contributed to a disconnect with working-class voters is a counterintuitive point. It suggests that an educated elite may inadvertently create policies that do not resonate with or serve the needs of less educated constituents, challenging the assumption that higher education equates to better representation. 7. Emotional over rational decision-making. The text emphasizes that voters often prioritize emotional narratives over rational policy arguments. For instance, the notion that voters might prefer crazy over preachy reveals an emotional response to candidates rather than a purely logical assessment of their policies. This challenges the conventional wisdom that voters make decisions based primarily on logical evaluations of candidates' platforms. These counterintuitive elements underscore the complexity of voter behavior, party identity, and the evolving political landscape in the United States, suggesting that traditional political strategies may no longer suffice in engaging a changing electorate. The report on the historic shift in American politics following the 2024 elections, where the center-right Demokraatit Party has gained traction, reveals several critical points that are often overlooked. Here are some essential insights and their significance. 1. The disconnection from working-class voters. The report emphasizes the Democratic Party's disconnection from its traditional base, working-class voters. Sherrod Brown's reflections highlight a critical sentiment. Many voters feel abandoned by a party that no longer represents their interests. This disconnection stems from a perception that the Democratic Party has prioritized elite coastal interests over the needs of middle-class workers. The significance of this point lies in its potential impact on electoral strategies. The loss of working-class support can lead to diminished electoral prospects. As seen in the 2024 election outcomes where working-class districts shifted toward Republican candidates. 2. Economic realities and historical context. The report points to economic challenges like inflation and rising living costs as pivotal factors driving voter discontent. Sherrod Brown argues that the roots of this discontent extend back to the 1990s, particularly with the passage of NAFTA, which many workers feel betrayed their interests. Understanding this historical context is crucial because it illustrates a long-term trend of economic disenfranchisement that has led to the current political realignment. The significance here is that merely addressing current economic issues without acknowledging the historical grievances may not suffice to regain voter trust. 3. Call for core values and cultural engagement. Brown's call for Democrats to reclaim their identity as the Workers' Party emphasizes the need for a return to economic justice principles. This involves not only policy changes but also a cultural and emotional reconnection with voters. The overlooked significance of this point is the understanding that political identity is deeply intertwined with cultural narratives. Engaging with working-class narratives and concerns is essential for rebuilding trust. This cultural engagement is as important as the policy discussions, as it reflects the emotional landscape that influences voting behavior. 4. Effective governance and bureaucratic challenges. Klein and Thompson's criticism of ineffective governance presents a critical point that is often missed in broader political discussions. They argue for a streamlined government capable of delivering effective public services, which resonates with voters frustrated by bureaucratic inefficiencies. The overlooked significance of this argument is the potential for governance reform to become a cornerstone of political strategy. If the Democratic Party can present itself as a champion of effective governance, it could appeal to a broader electorate, including those disillusioned with both parties. 5. Abundance agenda and systemic reforms. The call for an abundance agenda highlights the need for systemic reforms to address economic issues. Klein and Thompson argue that simply increasing government spending is insufficient. The government must operate effectively. This point is significant because it shifts the conversation from traditional left-right debates about the size of government to a focus on government efficiency and outcomes. Recognizing that voters are concerned with how effectively their tax dollars are spent can reshape policy discussions and electoral strategies. 6. Cultural narratives and emotional resonance. The report illustrates that beyond economic policies, there is a significant cultural and emotional disconnect between the Democratic Party and working-class voters. Brown emphasizes the need for Democrats to understand and engage with ordinary workers' concerns. The overlooked significance here is the acknowledgement that political messaging must resonate emotionally with voters. Crafting narratives that speak to the dignity of work and the aspirations of everyday Americans can enhance voter engagement and support. 7. Long-term strategy and generational effort. The report underscores that the changes needed to reconnect with working-class voters and reshape the Democratic Party's identity will require sustained effort over years, if not decades. This long-term perspective is crucial, as it recognizes that political realignment is not a quick fix but a gradual process that involves rebuilding trust and credibility. The significance of this is that political strategies must be developed with an understanding of long-term voter sentiments rather than short-term electoral gains. Conclusion. The insights drawn from the report on the shift in American politics reveal critical dynamics that are often overlooked in mainstream political discourse. The disconnection from working-class voters, the historical context of economic policies, the need for effective governance, and the importance of cultural narratives are all significant factors shaping the current political landscape. For the Democratic Party to regain its footing. A comprehensive approach that addresses these issues with nuance and empathy is essential. Understanding these overlooked elements could be pivotal in developing strategies that resonate with a broader electorate and restore the party's identity as a champion of working-class interests. 1. Loss of working-class support. The disconnection between the Democratic Party and its traditional working-class base has become a significant focus in the aftermath of the 2024 election. Sherrod Brown emphasizes how voters feel that the party no longer represents their interests, particularly in light of policies perceived as favoring coastal elites over middle-class workers. The Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio exemplified this disconnection. As local voters felt neglected despite Democratic efforts to address their concerns. This point highlights the critical need for the Democratic Party to re-evaluate its identity and priorities to reconnect with its core voters. 2. Economic realities and systemic failure. Economic factors have played a pivotal role in shaping voter sentiment. The analysis points to inflation and the rising cost of living as key issues contributing to discontent among American voters. Sherrod Brown argues that inflation is a symptom of deeper systemic failures, particularly since the implementation of NAFTA in the 1990s. This historical perspective is crucial for understanding the long-term economic grievances of working-class voters, as they feel betrayed by policies that have led to stagnation in wages and increased economic inequality. 3. Call for a return to core values. The need for the Democratic Party to reclaim its identity as the Workers' Party is a central theme. Brown advocates for prioritizing economic justice and crafting policies that directly benefit working-class Americans. This includes addressing wage stagnation and creating an equitable economic landscape where hard work is truly rewarded. The emphasis on restoring the party's commitment to its foundational values resonates with voters seeking a genuine representation of their concerns. For effective government and reform, the advocacy for a more effective government, as discussed by Klein and Thompson, is another critical point of analysis. They argue that excessive regulation has hindered progress and that a streamlined approach could enable the government to better serve citizens' needs. Their concept of an abundance agenda is framed as a call for innovation and efficient implementation of public policies. This point underscores the importance of governance reform in addressing the systemic dysfunction that has led to voter disillusionment and could play a crucial role in restoring public trust in government institutions. Here are 3 famous historical cases that reflect significant political shifts similar to the recent emergence of the center-right Demokraatit Party. 1. The rise of the New Deal coalition, 1930s. In the wake of the Great Depression, the Democratic Party under Franklin D. Roosevelt forged the New Deal coalition, which realigned American politics. This coalition brought together diverse groups including labor unions, farmers, African Americans, and urban intellectuals, uniting them under a platform of economic recovery and social reform. The coalition's success was marked by a focus on job creation, Social Security, and regulatory reforms, which helped the party maintain dominance for decades. However, by the late 1960s and early 1970s, the coalition began to fracture, particularly as issues like civil rights and anti-war sentiment created divisions among its constituents. 2. The Reagan Revolution, 1980s. The election of Ronald Reagan in 1980 marked a significant shift in American politics as the Republican Party adopted a center-right platform emphasizing free market economics, reduced government intervention, and traditional conservative values. Reagan's presidency was characterized by tax cuts, deregulation, and a strong anti-communist foreign policy. This period saw working-class voters in the South and Midwest increasingly align with the Republican Party, as they felt that the Democratic Party had become too liberal and disconnected from their interests. The cultural and economic shifts during this time laid the groundwork for a more right-leaning political landscape in the United States. 3. The Tea Party movement, 2009. Following the election of Barack Obama, the Tea Party emerged as a grassroots political movement that sought to challenge what its supporters viewed as excessive government spending and overreach. The movement galvanized conservative voters, particularly among working-class and middle-class Americans who felt left behind by the political establishment. The Tea Party's influence resulted in significant electoral gains for Republicans in the 2010 midterm elections and reshaped the party's policies to focus on limited government fiscal conservatism and a return to traditional values. This movement exemplified how economic discontent and cultural anxieties can lead to a significant reorientation of political allegiances. These cases illustrate how shifts in voter sentiment and party alignment can reshape political landscapes often driven by economic realities and cultural narratives. Future outlook: the shift towards the center-right Demokraatit Party and business-focused reforms. The political landscape in the United States is undergoing a significant transformation following the 2024 election, where the center-right Demokraatit Party has emerged as a formidable force, effectively displacing the anti-American left. This shift is driven by a profound disillusionment among working-class voters, many of whom feel abandoned by the Democratic Party. The Demokraatit Party's promise of business-focused reforms is likely to reshape the political and economic landscape in the years to come. Here are some predictions for the future based on the current political climate. 1. Rejuvenation of the working-class base. As the Demokraatit Party redefines itself, a critical focus will be on regaining the trust of working-class voters. This demographic has increasingly aligned with Republican ideals due to perceived neglect from the Democratic Party. The Demokraatit Party is expected to prioritize economic justice, advocating for policies that directly address wage stagnation, affordable housing, and healthcare access. By reclaiming its identity as the Workers' Party, the Demokraatit Party could potentially restore its base and attract disenchanted voters back to its fold. 2. Implementation of business-focused reforms. The Demokraatit Party's agenda will likely center around business-friendly policies aimed at stimulating economic growth and innovation. These reforms may include deregulation, tax incentives for small businesses, and investments in infrastructure that support job creation. The emphasis on an abundance agenda will seek to streamline government processes, making it easier for businesses to thrive. This approach may also attract moderate voters who prioritize economic stability and growth. 3. Shift in Democratic coalition dynamics. The Demokraatit Party's pivot towards business-focused reforms may lead to a reconfiguration of its coalition, while striving to regain working-class support. The party may also attract moderate and independent voters who are disillusioned with the extremes of the left. This could result in a broader coalition that balances the interests of various socioeconomic groups, potentially stabilizing the party's electoral prospects in swing states. 4. Cultural and emotional engagement. Beyond economic policies, the Demokraatit Party will need to address the cultural and emotional disconnect that has alienated many voters. A focus on grassroots engagement and understanding the concerns of ordinary workers will be essential. The party may invest in community outreach programs and initiatives aimed at rebuilding trust. This could include town hall meetings, forums, and collaborative efforts with local organizations to foster a sense of connection and representation. 5. Navigating a complex political landscape. As the Demokraatit Party implements these reforms, it will face challenges from both the far left and far right factions within the political spectrum. The party must navigate these tensions carefully, balancing the expectations of its traditional base with the demands of a broader electorate. The success of the Demokraatit Party in the coming years will depend on its ability to present a cohesive and compelling narrative that resonates with a majority of voters while addressing the complexities of contemporary American life. 6. Long-term economic strategies. In light of the ongoing economic challenges, including inflation and rising living costs, the Demokraatit Party will need to adopt long-term economic strategies that prioritize sustainable growth. This may involve investments in renewable energy technology and workforce development programs. By positioning itself as a leader in innovation and sustainability, the party can appeal to younger voters concerned about climate change and economic inequality. 7. Public trust in government effectiveness. A core component of the Demokraatit Party's agenda will likely focus on restoring public trust in government. The party's commitment to effective governance, as articulated in the Abundance Agenda, will emphasize transparency, accountability, and the efficient delivery of public services. By demonstrating a capacity to deliver tangible results, the Demokraatit Party can rebuild faith in government as a force for positive change. 8. Revisiting trade policies. Trade policies will be a critical area for the Demokraatit Party as it seeks to regain the support of working-class voters who felt betrayed by past agreements like NAFTA. The party may advocate for fair trade practices that prioritize American workers and ensure that trade agreements include robust labor protections. This shift could help re-establish the party's credibility among constituents who have experienced the negative impacts of globalization. Conclusion. The emergence of the center-right Demokraatit Party marks a pivotal moment in American politics, characterized by a renewed focus on business-oriented reforms and a commitment to re-engaging with the working class. The future will likely see a concerted effort to rebuild trust, implement effective governance, and address the economic and cultural concerns of a diverse electorate. As the political landscape continues to evolve, the Demokraatit Party's ability to adapt and resonate with voters will determine its success in the years to come.